Okay, so we just did a loving kindness meditation. And this loving kindness meditation that we did is in the style of traditional Buddhism. And so it's the well wishes that we're sending out and that we're even generating for ourselves are very general and universal. And in that way, they can be very powerful because they sort of transcend our individual story, they transcend the circumstances of our life, and they really bring us into an awareness of something very primal, something very primordial. And so, on the other hand, we have two other ways of thinking of our spiritual development. So on the one hand, we're thinking of our spiritual development in terms of this universal awakening. The awakened heart is the same for everybody. And so there's this universal journey we're on, but then at the same time, we're also on an individual journey, on our individual hero or heroine's quest. And we all have different life circumstances, and we all have different variations on our aspirations and goals, and everyone might have a little bit of a different trajectory, and that is our individual path to walk. And I think what's important to understand is that there is a part of our spiritual practice that is that universal stream that transcends our story and our trajectory. But then at the same time, we'll also empower our story and our trajectory on the relative level to come into fruition and to come into its own in the most meaningful and aligned way possible. And so it's a really nice thing to, from the space of these practices, to then consider our vision for our life. What is our specific vision for our life, for our total flourishing, for our hero or heroine's journey? What is it? What does it look like? Who is the person on the relative level that I want to be? What is the life that I want to live? What are the things that I want to do? What are the things I want to share? And so this is really important. And what's amazing about this spiritual practice is that we could have any job, any job that is ethical, any job that is a right livelihood, or any work, any path, any vocation that is righteous, that is a virtue, and that is not at odds with our ethical framework, then anything can serve as the vessel for our spiritual practice and our spiritual development. And so we each have to look then, we have to sometimes come out of the universal, empowered by the universal, and then look into our own specific journey and the being that we want to be, the qualities we want to cultivate, the way of life we want to cultivate, the way of thinking we want to cultivate, the way of speaking that we want to cultivate. And we can engage in meditations and contemplations on that relative level. And this is a really important thing to balance as we go through the journey. So as I spoke of before, the path of this practice of loving kindness, we can also make it, really what we're saying is we want every being to have their heart's desire, including ourselves. We want every being to really come into their ultimate flourishing. And of course we know that, especially in the complicated world that we live in today, part of that is finding our way in the world, finding our purpose in the world, finding our work in the world. And if we don't feel connected to that, we might do some nice meditations, but there might still be this discontent because we don't know where we belong in the world. We don't know what we're meant to be doing in the world. And so coming into clarity about this can really be a very important part of an overall sense of well-being, of spiritual fulfillment, and of the fulfillment of our total human potential. And so on the one hand, again, just to reiterate, we have this universal path of enlightenment, of awakening that can take place within any human story or context. And then we have our specific journey, our specific purpose, our specific life path. And so one way that we can engage with this is we really sit and we ask the question, what is it that I most deeply desire? What is my heart's desire? What is my eternal longing? What is that which I'm here for? What is my purpose? In Buddhism, we think of what is my karmic propensity? What is it that I was aligned to do here in this world? And the initial contemplation is simply that, simply asking the question and journaling about it and trying to discover answers and trying to find our way. And then from there we step into the meditating on it. So once we've gotten clear on what it is that we want, who we want to be, the life we want to live, the things we want to do, the way we want to serve, then we begin to drop into meditation, and we sort of do this loving kindness meditation. But now we are basically calling in this higher self, this higher vision of our reality and of our being. And we are bringing it in the form of this light and in the specifics of that vision. And we're bringing that vision in. We're fully embodying it. We're feeling it in our bodies, and we're experiencing it as if it already existed, as if it was already our reality. And we work through this process until we're abiding in that, and we're really, this is who I am. This is the way that I was meant to live. This is the being I am. This is the life that I live. And that we experience in this sense of this total fulfillment. Because we are at once connected with our deep spiritual ground, and then from that, we're creating this most meaningful vision on the relative level, okay? Imbued with all of the insights, wisdom, and love of the eternal level, of the ultimate level. And so this can then, we can engage in this process where we spend some real time on ourselves in this meditation. As an act of loving kindness, we bring in this vision, and we vision quest. We search for the vision, and then we embody it. We search again, and we may have to revisit this daily, or at least weekly or monthly, and certainly every year, revisiting what is our vision for our life, and then embodying it again in meditation, and then living it in the world. Again, this view, meditation, and conduct. What is the view of our ultimate life? And then we meditate on that, and then we engage in the lifestyle, in the way of life that is aligned with that. So that can be sort of a way of summing up our practice as we engage in these universal practices, and then we also take into account our individual journey. And whatever the individual journey it is, it can always serve as a vessel for enlightenment, as a vessel for deeper understanding, for growing our love, for serving others. How can we have a path that is meaningful in all of those ways? Okay, so there's no one path. There is the one ground, there is the universal being, but how we manifest that, how we bring that into our life is different. And so as we bring this course somewhat to a close, there may be additional meditations coming later, but in some ways I now will be going into retreat. And as is said by the famous meditation master of Tibet, and he said this to his students, he said, simply hearing your spiritual mentor's practical instructions and knowing how to explain them to others does not liberate your own mind stream. So you must meditate. Even if you spend your whole life practicing a mere semblance of meditation, meditating in a stupor, cluttering the mind with fantasies, and taking many breaks during your sessions due to being unable to control your mental scattering, no good meditative experiences or realizations will arise. So it is important during each session to meditate according to your mentor's instructions and really put it into practice. So, in that spirit, I now feel that I really need to go into my own practice. I've heard the precious words of my teachers, and I've tried to follow them as best as I can, and I've tried to share them now with you. And so now we each go from here into our own practice and our own experience with the resolve to truly practice deeply, to truly evolve, to truly gain insight and understanding, to truly expand our hearts, and to truly find a life path and a life vision for ourselves that is deeply meaningful and that can be a vessel for ever-deepening enlightenment, and that abides in an understanding that whatever our life circumstances, we always have the opportunity to turn it into the path and to turn it into practice. So with that said, I wish you the very best in your practice, and I'm sending you tons of love, tons of light, and tons of inspiration to practice and to flourish. Okay? Be well.